The term Office 365 and Microsoft 365 sometimes are used somewhat interchangeably, and we have the notion of Office 365 that is found in many different interfaces and tools along the way. However, when it comes to purchasing Microsoft 365 or Office 365, we see a clear difference between the two. When we are talking about Office 365, we start talking about the more basic workloads and the more core functionalities of what used to be Office 365. Once we start looking at Microsoft 365 licenses, we start to see the newer services that have been added on above and beyond Office 365. So if I go into the admin center for Microsoft 365 and I click on Billing and Purchase Services, this is from where I'll be buying my licenses, my subscription, essentially everything that I'm going to be assigning to my users for them to use apps. So I like to open this up and click on Office 365 so that you see that I have a section for Office 365 licenses, and then right below I have a section for Microsoft 365 licenses. Now going back up to Office 365, you see that these are licenses that are costed per month per user. So my subscription is based in Canada, so all of my prices here are in Canadian dollars. And this license in Office 365 E5 has costed at $50.60 per month per user. Now I'm not sure what's included in this license and I'd like to compare it to other licenses. So I'll actually just click here on Details. And as soon as I click on Details, you'll notice that I have multiple columns here where I see the other types of licenses, the Office 365 E5, E3 and then the Microsoft 365 E5. So let's talk about some of the core components that are included in pretty much all of the Office 365 and Microsoft 365 licenses. One of those elements is the ability to install Office on your client computer called license coverage. So you can install it on up to 5 computers, so a fully functional version of Office. As well, you have all of the Office apps. Now you'll notice that the checkbox here is available for all licenses. So all of these licenses give you the ability to use a fully functional version of Outlook, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and all other Office applications. So that's common across all of the licenses. Then we talk about the collaboration and the services. Now, here we see that the Plan 2 is what is being offered to each user, and to see a little bit more of what's in Plan 2 for each workload, I click on each one of them. And a key element here, for example, is that if I have an Exchange Online mailbox, I can store up to 100 gigabytes of emails and files inside of that mailbox. And again, that's defined in Plan 2, and that is common to all of these licenses that are being compared here. However, if I look at audio conferencing and phone system, you'll notice that these functionalities gives you the ability to call and to have audio-video conferencing sessions. These options are not included in E3. You can be a guest by the way of an audio conference. You simply cannot set up a phone number for an audio conference in the E3 license. It's not included in there. The same thing for the phone system. You can't actually call out from your Office 365 with an Office 365 license. Now let's go a little bit lower here and let's look at some of the other functionalities now. As soon as I look at Microsoft 365 E5, we'll see that it includes the Azure AD Premium P2 license. Now I have another course on the LinkedIn library where I go deep into Azure Active Directory in Azure and I discuss this P2 license. But essentially the P2 license gives you a lot of additional functionality in Azure Active Directory, which gives you greater control over all the identities in your infrastructure. Something else interesting here that I do not find in any of my Office 365 or Office 365 E5 or E3 licenses is the Premium P2, Microsoft Intune, as well as Azure Information Protection and Multi-Factor Authentication. So you start to see that some of the more advanced functionalities for security and management are not included because they're not part of those core services of Office 365. The same thing here is true for Windows 10. Now Windows 10 is included in this license because Microsoft 365 E5 includes the Enterprise E5 license, and this Enterprise E5 license includes Windows 10. So you have a fully functional operating system of Windows 10. The same thing will likely be for Windows 11. The list goes down. These are additional apps that are not really the core Office apps, but a lot of them are free apps that are included in all the various licenses. So whenever you are looking to purchase your Office 365 licenses, it's always a good thing to evaluate and compare them to one another to see if the cost difference makes sense for your organization. Personally, I'm a big fan of the Office 365 licenses and the Microsoft 365 licenses at the business level. So beyond just a simple E3, E5, there are also business and enterprise licenses and so on. There are also licenses that allow you to just purchase one of the workloads. And so here I'll show you the various licenses that I've recently purchased. I have an Exchange Online Plan 1 license, and that's actually a license that gives a user simply the ability to access email, nothing else. And it's a very low-cost license and I have 2 of those, but I also have the Business Standard licenses. So the Microsoft 365 Business Standard license includes Office 365 E3 and then some other functionalities that I needed as well. One of my users needed audio conferencing. Actually 3 of my users needed audio conferencing. So I purchased 3 audio conferencing licenses, which is simply the add-on that gives you the difference between that E3 that gives the access to Microsoft Teams, but without audio conferencing. And that additional cost gives those user licenses the ability to now use audio conferencing as well. We'll look at later on in the course how we assign these licenses to each users. Some licenses we pay for and others are free. And there are free licenses here. For example, here it told me that I purchased 1 million licenses. I actually didn't purchase 1 million licenses, but it gives me that ability to use 1 million licenses for my users because they are at no cost. So some of those licenses I've had to purchase and add on and they will then get renewed. Some of them get renewed annually, some of them get renewed on a monthly basis depending on the purchase agreement of each license. But each one of those licenses are then assigned to my users and give those functionalities, those application functionalities to each one of my users.